One of the things that stood out to me was the way that you defined codependency, a little bit different than we all know about. So, why do you define it differently, and why do we need this new term?
It's one of my favorite things to talk about because it's the place where we start releasing a lot of shame and
Mhm,
blame and a lot of really old baggage. So the term codependency itself, as we understand it now and use it now, is not really a term in the psychological literature.
mhm,
There's only
mhm.
one way to diagnose it per se, which is the Holyoke Index, which every psychotherapist I talked to, and I spoke to 48, all went, that's not a good index. That's not a good tool. And as a diagnostician myself, ugh. So the term comes from the 12 steps. Now I'm talking about my side of the street. If 12 steps saved your life, I'm so thrilled. I'm so glad. And I'm not talking about your program. I'm talking about the parallel program, which is Al Anon, CODA,
Mhm, mhm.
ACOA. And those programs use the same language that AA, using the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, uses, but in the context of codependency, which was in its inception framed as the wife's problem, right?
Mhm,
The enabling, needy wife of the alcoholic man who was herself a para alcoholic. She was
mhm,
sick and suffering and had defects of character. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it on so many levels. We then
mhm.
look to the 1980s and the war on drugs, which is when this term whoosh, had a huge, like really
Urge, yeah.
had its
Mhm,
moment, a surge. And so we really therein see so much pathologizing and so much of this parallels with a war on drugs, anti person in substance use framing of what
mhm.
addiction is that doesn't talk about socialization, doesn't talk about conditioning, doesn't talk about trauma, doesn't talk about anything other than you're very wrong and bad. And I've never seen that help anyone. I mean, have you clinically seen you're very wrong and bad help? It doesn't,
No, the more you shame
no.
the person, the more they indulge in the unhealthy behavior. It's not even,
Yeah,
yeah. Hmm.
yeah. And so my work was really to take a deep dive into understanding the experience of codependent habits and to understand what it really looks like
Hmm.
and where does it come from? How do we learn to behave this way? And in that process, really came to understand these habits as brilliant survival skills,
Hmm.
not something to have shame about. And in that rewiring, rewriting process, tried to see the overlaps of the Venn diagram between codependent habits, perfectionist habits, and people pleasing habits, which
Hmm.
I know you're savvy. I've read your work. You're hearing me say habits, not identity, right?
Yes.
Yeah.